Valerie Coleman. I feel like I know a lot of folks, but if I haven't met you yet, I work for the Department of Disability and Aging Services. And I wanted to give like a really high level overview of the Age and Disability Friendly Initiative. After me, I'm gonna transition to Cecile. So I wanted right at the beginning to say, for more information, please feel free to contact me directly. I'll put my email in the chat later, or take a look online. But just to give some background, the Age Friendly Initiative was really sort of founded by the World Health Organization back in 2007. A lot of folks in this meeting, or at least a few folks in this meeting, were a part of this from the very beginning. San Franciscans and advocates had been really trying to push something as far as 2002. And there were a lot of age-friendly type initiatives, which I will also talk more about at the time, but the World Health Organization really has been shown to be one of the most successful models. Originally, it was 33 cities. Portland was the only US city. Now it's over 400. San Francisco has been designated as an age and disability friendly city since 2014. I will also add, to my knowledge, we are still the only city that is age and disability friendly. So when I use that term, I'm talking about our work specifically. When I use the term age friendly, that's sort of collectively how those initiatives are called. And in a nutshell, what this framework does is it provides a very flexible, dynamic outline for counties, communities, cities, even states at this level are using this age-friendly work. A framework by which you can look at a city, identify a baseline assessment. How are we doing across these whatever domains a community decides to look at, which I will also talk about which ones we're looking at. And then based on sort of a baseline assessment, how we're doing across these different areas, where are the gaps, where are the opportunities, to create an action plan. Cities usually implement for about 3 years. At the end of 3 years, which for San Francisco, our first action plan wrapped up last December. Then you do an evaluation. This is an opportunity to really be sort of transparent and talk about the process, what went well, what didn't, and then to build on it. This really is a dynamic, iterative process. And so hopefully never doing the baseline assessment, but we are now attempting to update the action plan for the next 3 years of implementation. On the right-hand side are the domains that San Francisco chose to look at. These are slightly different than the World Health Organization models, which is also the point. It was meant to be a flexible, place-based model. That means all of these initiatives look really different depending on what community you're in, and that's a good thing. So when we first started doing this, the World Health Organization didn't have a domain for resiliency and emergency preparedness, but anyone that lives in the Bay Area, especially San Francisco, that has always been a really important consideration for us. Our target populations are seniors, folks with disabilities, including cognitive impairment and dementia, and caregivers. So when we developed our baseline assessment and when we're looking at projects, actions, initiatives moving forward, we're really trying to hold space for all of those populations, which sometimes they overlap and sometimes they distinctly don't. And so that's really important to consider. This past cycle up until now, just to give you a snapshot, on the left-hand side, these are our implementation partners. So these are really sort of the agencies, advocates, community members, departments that have worked the hardest to really push this stuff forward. The Age and Disability Friendly Work Group has a ton of folks, community members, nonprofits, universities, city departments. And then I sit within DOS. Our co-chair is Nicole Bond from the Mayor's Office of Disability. And on the right-hand side are some past projects, partners. This past cycle, we had 24 projects. So that was 3 recommendations across the 8 domains. And they really were all unique and they really depended on the project. So within transportation, maybe we worked with the street engineers and worked with representatives at the state level trying to understand the science behind it and things like that. So that's why we have such a range of partners. Our past projects, so Andrew wanted me to speak specifically to our evaluation, which I wrapped up in December. And these, on the left-hand side, these were the 3 projects that the Age and Disability Friendly group worked on. The first one, develop and disseminate a best practices guide to accessibility and information sharing. That was really led by the Mayor's Office of Disability, COIT, and IT. And that was a challenging project. And so I think as I sort of talk about these projects, I think they will give you a good picture of what this work looks like broadly. Because as I mentioned, I think what we knew from the beginning that it would have to be a very dynamic and flexible process. And then COVID happened, which really some projects just had to completely drop off because either funding dried up, they were deemed non-essential based on sort of the health order, or our community partner or the partners that we were working with, say like Department of Public Works or Transportation, had totally different priorities, and sort of working on something that would further a policy goal in one area no longer became a priority for them, right? So, so these were the 3 that we worked on. The best practices guide, this is one of those examples that it's very needed. I know that the Mayor's Office of Disability is continuing to work on this, but it was also the kind of thing that we worked on. We presented to executive teams sort of citywide, and that's where it still is. So I think that was another really hard experience for our work, as I can say there was at least 3 or 4 recommendations out of our 24, particularly during COVID, that we were able to do our part in the work, and it still sits there. The second project that we worked on was with ensuring seniors and people with disabilities have access to affordable, reliable, and high quality technology. So some of the work that we did within that was partnering with the digital equity effort that was once COIT and now MOCD, that was previously Alex and now Ray. So that was the Digital Equity Conference before COVID. I think other folks helped work on that, and we're a part of that. Connect with Tech Week, that was DOS and SF Public Library and a whole bunch of other partners. Fiber to Housing, which was primarily MOCD, Department of Technology. And then the third one was increasing digital literacy for seniors. So this also really came out of the digital equity work that Alex had done with COIT and /MOCD, was support the launch of digital literacy innovation program. My understanding when Alex left is that was sort of a one-time funding grant with the hopes that that would continue. Again, this is also really similar to some of our other projects. And so I'll be really interested to see what Ray, and if other folks know what Ray thought about that. So those were the projects that we work on. What I will say is that they also really highlight that, particularly in the domains where there was either strong leadership, existing needs assessments, or like already very active partners within particularly the technology component of communication, information, and technology, we really worked closely with our partners, which on the right-hand side, the digital equity effort, which is what I'm loosely calling Alex, Vaughn, now Ray, formerly COIT, MOCD. So they, you know, as folks know, Alex did some fantastic work, and there was a lot of sort of a really robust needs assessment, more citywide when we first started this work. We also worked a lot with SF Connected and partners. So when we were developing the best baseline assessment, we we brought it to the SF Connected table and really facilitated a conversation. Where were they seeing gaps? Where were opportunities? We did that same thing actually with the Tech Council. I led a meeting where I really tried to, we tried to sort of talk through what were the gaps, what are some things that we can work on, where is the Tech Council's priorities. And again, this was all probably 2017, 18. The Public Library and the Mayor's Office of Disability. So those have been sort of our key partners, and we've been really lucky and within this domain, I think, that there are such great advocates and that there has been strong push for continued advocacy, continued needs assessments. And so I think our hope with this work is that we can continue furthering other folks' initiatives and amplifying and leveraging existing resources and such. And so with that in mind, moving forward, what we're hoping to do is update our action plan with some projects that will continue to meet the goals on the right-hand side. Those are very long-winded, but in a nutshell, these are what we identified as if we were to have an ideal age and disability friendly city within the context of communication, information, and technology, what would it look like? We think that information would be available through a variety of means. That information and data is available through open data sources and is available for planning and advocacy efforts. We would prioritize programs and policies that allow for accessible and inclusive technology, and increase efforts that empower seniors and adults with disabilities to identify and avoid fraud. So those were sort of really high level, almost vision level goals that the group had come up with in 2017-18. As you can see, almost any initiative or project that's really pushing forward digital equity or access to technology or access to information, accessibility of information, all that would fit within those goals. Again, I think it is also really important to sort of highlight that this domain is communication. So for example, ensuring the accessibility of, which in COVID we found was really needed. The information itself, so the availability of, how do we share existing resources? How do people know about things? Which I think particularly as DOS has been doing these Dignity Fund needs assessments, are realizing that so many folks don't even know what resources are available. So how are we getting the information out there? What information is available? And then technology. And so what I'm really excited that Cecile can be here is that, I think the digital needs assessment that she and her team worked on, the Empowered San Francisco Technology Needs Assessment, is going to be for us a fantastic sort of tool to really hear where gaps are, where challenges. It was a very robust system, and from that we're hoping to leverage and build our recommendations from there. So I want to pass it to her, but what I want to say about our work is that we are still very much in the fact finding. We had a meeting around communication information technology. Cecile gave a presentation. I have a whole notes about people's suggestions about recommendations, gaps, where we think partners were. And our goal is to do that over over all the domains. Our next domain, my head is very much in transportation right now. On Tuesday, we have a really transportation heavy conversation where we're doing the same thing. Where are the gaps? Where are the opportunities? And then in about a month or two, I'm taking all of the recommendations, all of the lessons learned that we've had from these different domain topics and prioritizing recommendations based on SMART goals. And so that's, here's an example of two, just to give you a sense of where the group was going at the last meeting. A work group to evaluate recommendations based on the needs assessments, a citywide digital accessibility program. And so my goal after Tuesday is to really pull together all these recommendations across 4 to 8 domains and really look at, make sure that they meet SMART goals. Are they time sensitive, deliverable? Do they have a partner? Do they address a gap? And then I will bring that back to the larger group, probably April or May. Folks are absolutely welcome to come. All of our meetings are open to the public. And that's where we sort of look at them and go, okay, which ones have at least some of these SMART goals in order to move forward, right? Because we just don't have the capacity. We had lots of great recommendations the first time around, such as build more affordable housing, which is 100% important. But if there isn't a tangible, if there isn't a partner, if there isn't a time limit, then we need to put it in the think tank and continue working on it. So that's a couple examples, but what I really want now is for Cecile to really share the work that she did, and particularly the fantastic recommendations that came out of it, because that's what I'm hoping that we can help push forward those.